kids, your old pal Stevie Coyle here, signing on from Mighty Fine Guitars in bucolic Lafayette, California. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have a special guest today, and he built this guitar. Folks, would you give a nice hand to Kevin Corcoran?
Oh, thank you so much. Delightful to be here. Thank you, Stevie, for having me. This just timed out perfectly.
This is wonderful. Yes. Kevin just happened to be in the neighborhood dropping off this guitar, which is moderately fantastic, I must say. I'm a huge 00 fan myself. It's a Corcoran 00 Cutaway, and it's quite fantastic. Tell us about the woods, Kevin.
The woods on this guitar are, this is a African mahogany, a flamed African mahogany, and the top of this guitar is an Engelmann spruce top, and I bought a pile of Engelmann tops from a gentleman who had been collecting them since the 70s. So this top is already like 30 or 40 years old now, which is, it actually has helped speed up the sweetening of this.
It's delicious.
Yeah, so it's got mahogany bindings and a walnut rosette. And it's kind of the similar appointments that I typically do on some of my guitars. My guitars feature a cantilevered fretboard to keep the fretboard off the top of the instrument. I like to find as much freedom on the tops as I possibly can. And that's every guitar I've ever made has had one of those, and it makes for a very easy to adjust neck as well.
It's quite wonderful. Yeah. And it does, you know, the old Martin principle of there's no tone in the upper bout. Just paste down the fingerboard, you know, and put a big brace under there. Kevin would beg to differ, I'd say.
Well, at the same time, yeah, not only is there not a gargantuan piece of wood under there to support that, if I need to reset one of my guitars, or over time it just changes a little bit and I want to change the angle, I simply bolt my necks on so they come off very easily. And if you were to do that, as most of you probably know, on a glued-in neck joint where the fretboard is glued to the top, once you change that neck angle, there's always a neck angle change where the fretboard actually touches the top. So when you sight down the neck, the fretboard kind of dives down. This way, this is independent, so if I move this, everything kind of changes at this end. And this is not my idea, but I just love this concept, and so I went with it when I started building. So.
Well, you know, just because I can hear the uproar from the back row, but what about the dovetail joint? What about bolt-ons?
Oh, is this the appropriate forum for that discussion?
Oh, yes. This is Geek Central.
Okay.
You know, we can geek out.
Well, I like Frank Ford's analogy of a bolt-on versus a dovetail. Yeah. In a guitar's lifetime, a neck is going to have to come off a guitar.
Right.
It's going to need a reset or two along the years, and why should that be so difficult for that to be done? So there are those that say a dovetail neck joint more securely fastens the neck from a tonal standpoint, so the mass of the neck becomes part of the more, and I just personally don't buy that. Now there may be some validity to that, but I just think the function of being able to get the neck off easily far outweighs that. So I try to find tone in other places that still allow the guitar to be serviced very easily.
Such as the upper bout, which
absolutely
seems to be a
yeah. You know, there's granted most of the action on a guitar is down here.
Right.
But how many guitars do things to squeeze every little mile per gallon out of their guitars that they can?
That's right.
Well, this is real estate that if it's a little bit freer, it's going to add a little bit of the flavor to the guitar.
And jazz guitarists have been doing that for decades. Of course, they've got arched tops.
Exactly.
Which is kind
exactly.
of the principle there, I suppose. But if you can apply the same, or now I got to flaunt my ignorance of jazz guitars. How do they float a fingerboard there?
Well, jazz guitars, and again, I'm not a jazz guitarist or builder or a player, but they have very radical carved tops. So there was no physical way to keep this aligned without having it suspended over the top of the instrument.
That's right.
And so our tops are much more gently radius than that.
Yes, indeed.
So,
yes, indeed.
But,
and how was the joint made? Was that kind of a typical dovetail joint on the old jazz guitars?
That I don't know. I you know, probably.
Question for the audience.
Probably, I would imagine. Yeah.
We probably have somebody out there who can tell us.
But I build acoustics. I don't know anything about electrics, and mainly because I sound horrible when I play an electric guitar. So, I mean, it's just like a duck out of water.
Me
for
too.
Me.
Yeah.
So I concentrate on what I build.
That's right.
So, you know.
And they are different instruments.
But totally, completely different.
In the same sense, I think that a lot of people would agree that a classical guitar is a different instrument from a steel.
It's like a piano and an organ to me. I mean, they're just, you know, even though they're all keyboards, they're just gigantically different. So.
You know, and this is where I wish our technology would allow for. I'll get some really great shots of this and pop them up on the website. But the binding and purfling is all really gorgeous on this. Can you zoom in a little bit there, Ducky? Folks, if you would please, a little hand for Shigor, mistress of the machines, my own dear Valerie.
Camera operator extraordinaire.
Impersonating the camera and microphone. So if you can kind of zoom in on this a little bit, if we can get a little bit of detail going on the, or if I come in closer, is this? Tell me one thing's getting ridiculous.
We're probably near that.
Can you see that purfling there? Just spectacularly gorgeous.
It's kind of, I think it's called a chevron, kind of half chevron purfling.
Half chevron,
So,
right.
Mm-hmm. And it's got a walnut rosette. I try to get as much wood on my instruments as possible, so I don't use ivoroid or plastic bindings. I haven't done a lot of shell work because it's just it's not wood.
And the flame and the maple, what accounts for flame?
That is actually mahogany.
Mahogany.
That's but maple will exhibit that same kind of flame. That's a stress that the tree is under when it grows. So generally speaking, what I have found, and I hope this is true across the board, is that the flamey stuff generally is at the bottom of the tree, where it's under that tremendous stress all those years.
Yep.
And that's where I tend to think that flame comes from.
And tonally, I would not have guessed if somebody just popped this in my hands and said, is this mahogany or rosewood? The size of the guitar, it's a double O, so it's pretty small. Now, it's not a parlor, although what people call parlors, a lot of folks will call anything smaller than a dreadnought or a jumbo a parlor. And it just ain't so. In Martin lingo, a parlor is anything smaller than an O. So just a size 1 or a 2 or a 2.5. Those are real live parlors. But this is a double O. This is about the size of a classical guitar. Is that
roughly?
Roughly.
I would think it's slightly smaller than a classical guitar. Yeah,
it'll fit in the classical case.
Absolutely.
So,
right.
And it, when I first played this, I thought, I just kind of picked it up and played it. Didn't look at it, and it has tons of bass. I tend to think of mahogany as being kind of in the mid-range of things, with a little bit of attenuation in the high end, a little bit of attenuation in the low end. But I don't know. Maybe it's the flame. Maybe it's the fact that this has been compressed by the rest of a huge mahogany tree pushing down on it in Africa somewhere dozens of years ago.
That wood, I also had resawn that wood from lumber that I bought, and that has been sitting on my shelf for probably 7 or 8 years before I happened to use that set. I'd made about 6 guitars out of this lumber that I built. That's the last one, out of that particular piece of wood.
Kevin owned a shop that perhaps some of you had been to before, certainly heard of, the Gilroy Guitar Gallery for many years down in Gilroy, California. And, well, I'll play you a little tune that's just a little snippet of a thing. It's from the neighboring town, Salinas, which is where I went to high school and my adopted hometown. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much. Man, oh man, it just about plays itself. It's fantastic. And it has, this one has that kind of nice punch that mahogany has, that nice mid-range punch, but it's got some shimmer on the high end and it's got some boom on the low end as well. And it's a double O, which, as perhaps some of you know, is my favorite size guitar. As tall as I am, I don't wrap around a dreadnought the way I used to. In fact, there's a lot of dreadnoughts in the shop right now from guys who have said, I just don't wrap around my dreadnought the way I used to. And that's a true fact. And these are, this is a good size to be
A comfy size.
It's a comfy size. It's the sofa sweetheart
Yes, it
size. Somebody called it that, and I think that's fantastic because that's what a lot of guys want to do these days. Just kind of hang out. You're watching Netflix, some sports, whatever, and you got your guitar in your lap and you're playing along. The dreadnought is not optimal for that. Well, this is quite remarkable. Tell us about the Gilroy Guitar Gallery. What were the years you were there?
Gilroy Guitar Gallery, I started in 2001, and I owned it into 2006, and then I sold the shop to a fellow named Rocco, who ran it for a few more years.
Right.
And I was a Taylor, Martin, Breedlove, Santa Cruz, McPherson, Hill dealer, and Larrivee and Tacoma when they were alive.
Right.
And I did really well with most of those brands. I was a top 3 or 4 Breedlove dealer for several years. I was McPherson's top dealer the last year that I owned the shop. And so I had high-end stuff and high-end clientele, and would drive a great distance, as you probably know. They come from miles around to where the good guitars are. And I had people drive 200 miles on a Saturday morning to play stuff.
Of course, it was a lovely shop.
Yeah,
it was a
we
lovely
had
shop.
fun.
And you did a music series there as well.
But that was at kind of the time where Taylor had their clinicians. And so you could have Doyle Dykes or Artie Traum or Chris Proctor or a long list of great players come out at a very nominal cost to the dealer at the time. Yeah. I think they've by and large done away with that.
Don't hear about it.
They do road shows and other things, but they don't do the clinician thing anymore. Right. And then I had Ed Gerhardt many times and Lawrence Juber many times, and then just started kind of booking these guys directly and would fill churches.
You bet.
For some of these really, really good guys.
You
And
bet.
that was a great fun part of the job.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
Well, you and I have Rocco in common, in a sense. Rocco Tavani was a fellow I knew in Salinas, a few years older than I was, in the theater world.
He's big in theater.
Big in theater.
Still
is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Does community theater all the time.
Oh, he's a fantastic actor, wonderful singer, actor, great fellow.
And he's a new grandfather.
Is he
very
really?
recently, in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, Rocco,
his daughter had a child. Yeah.
Well done. I gotta say hello.
Yeah.
Well, he is responsible for, and indirectly, I suppose, for me getting my first good guitar.
All right.
There was a guitar, Gadsby's Music, there that was being consigned. It was a D18 from 1967, 232192. If anybody out there has it, I'd love to know where it is.
Serial number.
Absolutely, 232192, 1967. And it was, and Rocco had it on consignment there. I fell in love with it and begged my parents. And I think they felt a little bit guilty because they had in a previous year bought me a guitar that they thought was a really good guitar. It was a very inexpensive classical guitar, but they just kind of did this and said, oh, it had this lovely soft sound. I don't want a soft sound. No. I want a rock.
That's right.
So I think they felt a little bit guilty about that because it was one of the most awkward Christmas mornings I can remember.
How old were you?
I was, at that point, I would have been 13 or 14, I guess, 14 or 15. And it was when I was 16 they got me the Martin.
Oh, okay.
But the other guitar was just kind of a Brand X little classical guitar. And it was one of those Christmas mornings where I came out and I said, oh, I don't see a guitar under the tree. I wonder what's going on. And they said, well, that's it. Oh, wait, no, there's something out in the car or in the garage or something. My dad went out and brought this thing in, and I saw this case coming, and I was all excited. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the right size. And they opened up the case. I'm sure my face just fell.
That big wide neck. And
the big wide neck, and that's a really kind of plucky.
Soft tone. Yeah,
soft
right.
Tone. No. So I think they guilted themselves. Being good Catholic parents as they were, they guilted themselves into getting me the Rocco's Martin.
Okay.
When I was a junior, and so a little shout out. Hello, Rocco.
Very good.
Nice to see you. And this is one of those guitars that does not shout at you from across the room, but when you get up close, and I always think the player's perspective is really important, because whatever's going on from here is the stuff I'm interested in. I can see this beautiful work on the neck, the binding of the fingerboard, the position markers, the binding on the body.
The binding on this is actually remnants of the cutoff, so it's all the same from the same board.
Stuff.
It's all got the same flame in it and so forth. Yeah,
it's so lovely.
Yeah. It's funny because I like the aesthetic of this. I like the red on red kind of look.
Yeah.
Mahogany is fairly soft, so binding is inherently supposed to protect the edges of your guitar.
Yeah.
This will ding up pretty easily, but it looks so good.
It looks so good.
And hopefully they're not buying this to be a golf club or a hammer or something,
No.
And so I thought I'm going to go with the mahogany on mahogany.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I do, Ivoroid. There's a place, I suppose, but not on a 00, and not on a guitar that looks this lovely. It's just sort of a mahogany fest all over the place.
It is, neck and all, sure.
You bet.
Adam Stark does my lacquer work over in Santa Cruz, and mahogany generally is very pale. It'd be impossible to show you, but if you look inside of the guitar, you'll see the natural color of that wood. It's quite a pale wood.
It's very pale.
But I love it when he sprays this stain for me, and it's quite difficult because you then have to go back and scrape all the purfling so that the white purfling you shed the
course.
stain off. He
Yeah.
actually sprays the color on. So that's a very meticulous process to go back and then clean up all the lines
Right.
and then lacquer over the top of that. But it would be, to me, it's a somewhat bland-looking wood in a natural sense. I just like the richer look of
Sure
kind
thing.
of that 30s-esque kind of Martini kind of stain they used to use.
That's right, and it looks really 3D. You kind of get a little one of these things. You get that lenticular action going on there. It's like those old postcards where you just tip it a little bit, and the surfer would do its
Yeah, the
thing.
waves are moving.
The little hula girl would do her thing,
Yeah.
or whatever, you know.
Yeah. So.
It's just wonderful. I've had a number of Corcorans come through the shop, and they typically don't stick around long. There was one that stuck here for a long time, but it was waiting for the perfect guy, and the perfect guy got it, and he's exceedingly happy.
He came in January, in fact. But
He
he
did
probably
indeed.
had that guitar here for a year.
I think it was here for a year.
Or maybe slightly more. And
Could be.
but it's I've always someone else told me this. Well, the owner of that guitar just hasn't shown up yet.
That's it. The wand chooses the wizard. That's
Yeah,
the Harry
yeah.
Potter people say.
Okay.
They're just waiting for the
Yeah,
right wizard to
yeah.
walk in. Sometimes that's just enough. 2 chords is all you need.
Very nice.
Kevin Corcoran.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my
Thank
pleasure.
very
You make
much.
that sound wonderful.
Oh man, it's available here, and come on in, play it, buy it, take it home, love it forever. Wonderful guitar. Thanks, Kevin.
My pleasure.
All right. You want to stick around for the rest of the show?
Absolutely.
Can you
Why
stick
not?
around?
Here, I'll take that.
Take that. In fact, play that if you like. A little
I
background.
can't play in your shadow now. Come on now.
Jeez.
Don't do that to me.
It's just music. It's just notes. Well, this, much as it looks like a box of cake, it's not. It's not donuts, I'm afraid. Although somebody said the proper thing with donuts, put them down on the ground, light them, and get away quickly. I thought that was good advice. Because it's National Donut Day, apparently. Happy Donut Day.
Oh my gosh. Who wouldn't know?
This is my pal Gary.
Oh yeah.
This is called the ToneDexter, and I think we featured this a whole long time ago. I'm going to have the guy who invented it, who was a student and a pal and a customer of mine, come in and demo this for you sometime. But this is the new and improved ToneDexter. We'll have a little unboxing here. Here's the instructions, and it's not much of an unboxing video. I'm going to tell you right now because there's not much to it. There's this little red box and a wall wart, and that's it. That's all you get. Thanks, Kevin. Here, give that to you.
Thank you, Vanna.
This is yes. Here, hold.
Okay, sure.
You can style it, baby. Style
Let's see,
it.
what do we got? An adapter in there.
Just a wall wart.
Yeah.
That's all it is. This is the ToneDexter. What this does is it makes your pickup, which normally sounds like a pickup, it makes it sound like your guitar mic'd. So kind of the same principle as behind the Fishman Aura, except it models your guitar. And it's dead easy to do. You plug in, you take an out of your guitar pickup, plug it in here. You hang a microphone in front of your guitar. So you've got 2 things going into the box. You've got the sound of your pickup and the sound of your guitar mic'd. And the ToneDexter, you just play for a minute or 2. It takes you through this little cycle. It shows you where you are in the cycle of getting the whole thing modeled properly. And it'll tell you when you're done. And when you're done, all of a sudden your pickup signal sounds like your guitar mic'd beautifully. So if you would prefer to hear the sound of your guitar come through a PA, and your guitar from out in front of your guitar, which is where guitars are made to be listened to, the problem with a pickup is not that they're not accurate, it's that they're listening to a tiny little piece of your guitar. They're not listening to the whole top. They're not listening to the air in front of your guitar that's being excited by, well, it depends on how you play, that are being the waves that are coming off the front of your guitar, which is what everybody else in the world wants to listen to. So this very simply and very swiftly turns your pickup sound into the sound of your guitar mic'd. And so you might need to add to this kit a good mic or borrow one from a pal, and off you go. It's got he came in the other day, said, I've got some improvements I want to make to your ToneDexter. I said, yeah, okay, you know, I was digging around for a screwdriver. I thought I'd have to get in there and kind of undo the whole thing. There's a little slot, a little SD card slot in the side where he can update the firmware. And he just turned it off, plugged in the card, booted it up, plugged it back in, booted it up. It read off the card all the new information. And in the new information, he increased the resolution of the sounds in there by a third or a half. And he added 10 more spaces. Now there are 11 spaces in here for 11 different instruments. This will model guitars, banjos, mandolins, fiddles. It won't do basses. There's kind of a different set of firmware you need for bass instruments. But for most of the string band instruments that you and I know, this will do 11 of those. So you could either have 11 different portraits of your one guitar, or you could have one for your big guitar, one for your little one for your mandolin, one for your banjo, etc., etc. He increased, in that one little 10-minute session, he increased the capacity of 11 different slots to 21 different slots in this thing. It's a $400 unit. Come and get them, is all I got to say. They really sound great. I'm going to have him come back in now that we've got he came in before and demoed sort of the prototype of this. But I'll have him come back in and demo for you the full tilt retail unit, which is just moderately fantastic.
Are you going to sell those here?
Why, thank you for asking. I am indeed. Indeed.
Okay.
$399.95, but for you, $399. Special deal. And it does all kinds of cool extra stuff besides. You can make kind of little tiny on-the-fly adjustments to it that are very, very useful in a performance situation. Lots of people are using these things. John Jorgensen has gone wild with this thing. He's touting them like crazy. In fact, he has taken these. He's running old recordings of him playing, old live recordings in particular, him playing through kind of those snappy, quacky piezo pickups. He's running his signal back through this and modeling the guitar that he was playing.
Oh, interesting.
So even 10, 20, 30 years later, he can redo his sounds. And he'll be reissuing those records. It's the same performance on the same guitar, but now it sounds like that guitar instead of the snappy, quacky, almost barnyard sounds that come out of a piezo pickup when you hit them hard. The ToneDexter is what I'm saying, by Audio Sprockets. So go to audiosprockets.com and check it out. And I got them here in the shop. So like I say, come and get them. $3.99, they're yours. And they're just moderately fantastic. And I think that's all for today, kids. Any questions? Did we have any questions, Ducky? No? No comments or questions? Well, fine.
Be that way.
Be that way. Well, tune in again next week. I'll pop this up on my own homepage, and the conversation will continue. So it's your old pal Stevie Coyle here. Oh, and thanks for asking. The Quitters? Yeah. Look at that. Isn't that a snappy looking t-shirt? That's the Quitters are me and Glenn Houston from Houston Jones. And we just had a fine time up at the Strawberry Music Festival. Thanks for asking. It was big, big fun. And we got t-shirts and everything. They're $25 American, and we'll send them to you. So there's lots of purchase opportunities here. But mostly, just come into the shop and play everything, please. Everything wants to get played. You only make the guitar sound better by getting them played. So even if you think, oh, I'm not going to buy anything, I don't want to go in there, come on in and check it out. It's kind of a little museum as well, and there's lots of cool, esoteric stuff you probably wouldn't find elsewhere. A question in the back.
Are there any Quitters hats yet?
Quitters hats, no, on the way. And action figures as well. Quitters action figures are going to be big. They were on a boat back from China. There was a problem with the paint or something. Maybe too much action in the action figures. But the hats are on the way too, yeah. But for the moment, we just have t-shirts in red, blue, green, and gray. Thanks for asking. So like I was saying, Stevie Coyle here. Tune in next week. Every Friday at noon, almost every Friday at noon-ish. Exactly.
Like today?
Friday-ish at noon-ish, like today.
Yeah.
Precisely. And once again, Kevin Corcoran, brand new guitar just delivered to the shop today. Come in and play it. It's an astonishment.
And
Thanks so much.
visit Corcoran Guitars when you get a chance.
That's right, CorcoranGuitars.com.
.com.
There you go.
.com.
He's a .commie as well. All right. We'll see you down the road. So long.
Thank you.